On a Monday morning in February 2003, the Diamond District of Antwerp woke up to a strange kind of silence. The streets were already busy. Couriers moved quickly between offices, security guards checked badges, traders stepped into narrow buildings carrying briefcases that never left their wrists. From the outside, nothing looked unusual. But beneath one of those buildings, behind layers of steel, sensors, locks and concrete, a vault door stood open. Not broken open, open. Inside, safe deposit boxes had been emptied in neat rows. Hundreds of millions of dollars in diamonds, gold, cash and jewelry had vanished. No alarms had brought police racing through the night. No guards had reported shouting, drilling or explosions. No one had seen a suspicious truck, a masked crew or a frantic escape. It was as if the vault had simply decided to surrender. And for the investigators arriving that morning, the most disturbing question was not how much had been stolen. It was this: how do you investigate a crime scene designed to leave almost nothing behind? Antwerp is a city with many identities. Port city, fashion capital, medieval trading centre. But for centuries, it has also been one of the beating hearts of the global diamond trade. By the early 2000s, enormous value changed hands every day within a compact cluster of streets near Antwerp's central station. To a passerby, the district could seem almost ordinary: stone facades, discreet offices, guarded entrances, narrow sidewalks. But behind those doors, fortunes could fit into a shirt pocket. The vault at the centre of this story sat beneath the Antwerp Diamond Centre. It was protected by a security system that sounded less like something from a commercial building and more like something from a spy film. A reinforced vault door, multiple locks, sensors designed to detect heat, light, movement and magnetic interference. Cameras, access controls, security procedures built around the assumption that no single safeguard should ever be trusted alone. The principle was simple: even if one lock failed, another would hold. Even if one sensor was bypassed, another would react. Even if a criminal reached the door, the vault itself would remain a sealed world. Yet, when staff arrived after the weekend, that sealed world had been entered. The first officers saw a scene that was almost unnervingly calm. Deposit boxes had been forced open, but not in a frenzy. The thieves had worked selectively and methodically. Some boxes had been emptied, others were untouched. Loose papers, envelopes and packaging remained scattered across the floor. A crime involving such enormous value should have produced chaos. Instead, it felt organized, patient, professional. The investigators began with the obvious possibilities. Had there been an insider? Had someone copied a key? Had the security system malfunctioned? Had the crews somehow entered during business hours and hidden underground until the building emptied? Every theory opened another question. The vault had not been breached with brute force. There were no signs of an explosion, no heavy drilling through the walls, no tunnel leading in from another basement. The thieves had apparently approached the front door of one of the most secure private vaults in Europe and persuaded it to open. Investigators began reconstructing the weekend hour by hour. Saturday passed without a clear alarm event. Sunday passed the same way. Somewhere during that quiet stretch, the thieves entered the building, reached the vault level, defeated each security layer, opened deposit boxes, loaded the proceeds, and left. They had time. That was important. A rushed crew makes noise. A rushed crew leaves tools behind. A rushed crew overlooks cameras, forgets fingerprints, drops personal items, misjudges weight, or chooses the wrong exit. This crew appeared to have understood the building before they entered it. Not merely the floor plan, the rhythm of the building. When doors were opened, when guards moved, which systems were checked, which systems were trusted, which systems were impressive on paper but predictable in practice. And that created a second mystery. How long had the thieves been studying the vault? Days? Months? Years? The investigation soon focused on a tenant in the Diamond Centre. His name was Leonardo Notarbartolo. He was Italian, polished, careful, and outwardly respectable. He rented office space in the building and presented himself as a diamond merchant. That office mattered. It meant he had legitimate access to the building. It meant he could observe the entrances without drawing attention. It meant he could learn which security habits were routine and which were merely theatre. And most importantly, it meant he could stand near the vault without looking like a man who was studying a vault. Investigators would later argue that this was not a spontaneous crime. The office had been part of the preparation. Notarbartolo had allegedly built a cover identity and maintained it long enough to blend into the district. He had entered a world where suspicion was constant and somehow made himself boring. That may have been the first real breakthrough. The crime scene had offered almost nothing, but the building had offered a person, a man who had spent too much time close to the target. Then the investigation received the kind of break that changes the tone of an entire case. Not from a security camera, not from an informant, not from a hidden microphone, from a bag of trash. Days after the burglary, debris was discovered near a wooded area outside Antwerp. The contents appeared ordinary at first. Wrappers, receipts, bits of discarded material, papers, and objects that might easily have been ignored. But investigators began sorting through it carefully. Among the items were clues that connected the discarded waste to the vault. Packaging associated with stolen property, documents linked to the Diamond Centre, materials that suggested someone had cleaned out a vehicle or temporary staging area and dumped the remains carelessly. There were also traces that pointed back toward Notarbartolo. It was a startling mistake. A crew capable of bypassing one of Europe's most formidable vault systems had apparently failed at something far simpler: throwing away garbage. That contrast fascinated investigators. Was the dump site an act of arrogance? A rushed cleanup? A careless accomplice? Or had someone inside the group intentionally left a trail? Because in complex crimes, mistakes do not always mean incompetence. Sometimes they mean conflict. The police suspected that Notarbartolo had not worked alone. The scale of the burglary made a solo operation almost impossible. Someone had to understand alarms. Someone had to handle locks. Someone had to move containers and tools. Someone had to manage timing, transport, and escape. Italian investigators and journalists would later describe a possible team with nicknames that sounded like characters from a thriller. The Genius, the Monster, the King of Keys, Speedy. Real criminals do not always have cinematic nicknames, but in this case, the names seem to fit the mythology. The Genius was said to be the strategist, the person who could study an alarm system and see not a wall, but a sequence of habits. The King of Keys was associated with locks and mechanical precision. The Monster was described as a physical presence, useful when strength and patience were both required. Speedy, depending on the version of the story, was a driver, assistant, or nervous participant whose discipline may not have matched the others. Some details remain disputed. Some identities were never established in court. But investigators were convinced of one thing. The burglary had required a team, and a team creates vulnerabilities. Every additional participant means another person who can panic, another person who can talk, another person who can resent the division of money, another person who can make one careless stop on the way home. The investigators now tried to reverse engineer the impossible. The vault's defences were examined one by one. According to accounts of the case, the thieves used a combination of careful planning, physical manipulation, and knowledge of the system's blind spots. A magnetic sensor on the vault door may have been defeated with a customized metal plate. A light sensor may have been neutralized. A heat or infrared sensor may have been masked. Cameras may have been obstructed or avoided. The alarm system, intimidating as a whole, could be treated as a chain. And a chain is never defeated all at once. It is defeated link by link. The thieves may have rehearsed each movement repeatedly before the weekend of the crime. They may have created replicas. They may have photographed components. They may have visited the building so often that the act of observation became invisible. Imagine the patience required. Not the excitement of the burglary itself, the months before it. Walking through the same doors, greeting the same guards, taking the same elevator, carrying the same briefcase, waiting, watching, memorizing, pretending not to care. By the time the crew entered the vault for real, they may already have performed the burglary dozens of times in their minds. But the case developed another layer. Notar Bartolo claimed the burglary was not exactly what the public believed it to be. He suggested that the heist had been encouraged or commissioned by someone connected to the diamond trade. According to his version, the vault contained fewer valuables than reported. Some box holders, he implied, may have exaggerated their losses for insurance purposes. It was a convenient story, very convenient, but it could not be dismissed entirely. The diamond business depends heavily on trust, documentation, private transactions, and reputation. Some assets can move quietly. Some ownership arrangements are complex. Some claims are difficult to verify after the contents of a locked box have disappeared. The police had to consider a possibility that complicated everything. What if they were not investigating one crime? What if the vault burglary had created opportunities for several others? Insurance fraud, concealed ownership, private disputes, false claims hidden inside a genuine theft. A heist large enough to attract headlines can also become a shadow where smaller crimes disappear. Notar Bartolo was arrested. The evidence gathered from the discarded trash helped connect him to the burglary. Investigators built a case around his access to the building, his preparation, and physical evidence. He was convicted and sentenced to prison. But conviction did not answer the largest question. Where were the diamonds? The stolen property was never recovered in any meaningful amount. The crew, if the police theory was correct, had planned more than entry and escape. They had planned disappearance. Diamonds are uniquely suited to vanishing. They can be separated from settings, recut, mixed with legitimate stones, transported in tiny quantities, sold through layers of intermediaries, hidden for years. A stolen painting remains itself. A stolen diamond can be transformed until the crime becomes nearly impossible to see. Officially, the burglary had been solved in part. A central figure had been identified, prosecuted, and imprisoned. But the case still contained empty spaces. Who exactly had entered the vault? Who had designed the method? Who had handled the stolen stones after the burglary? Was the trash dump a simple mistake? Or had one member of the crew betrayed another? And was Notar Bartolo telling the truth when he hinted that the reported losses did not match the actual contents of the vault? Investigators had a conviction, but they did not have closure. This is where the public record becomes incomplete, and where the final part of our story begins. The next section is a dramatized reconstruction inspired by the unresolved questions in the real case. It is not part of the established historical record. In this reconstruction, the investigation did not truly end with Notar Bartolo's conviction. It narrowed, quietly, away from the cameras. A Belgian financial investigator named Elise Vermeer was assigned to review irregular insurance claims connected to the burglary. Vermeer was not a vault specialist. She did not understand magnetic plates or alarm circuits. She had never picked a lock. Her work was slower, less dramatic. She read documents, she compared dates, she noticed what people tried to make boring. Most claims followed a pattern. A box holder provided records. The insurer reviewed them. Lawyers argued. Values were adjusted. But 3 claims stood out. They had been filed through separate companies, different names, different addresses, different attorneys. Yet each claim included an inventory sheet formatted in precisely the same way. Same spacing, same numbering system, same unusual abbreviation for polished stones. Vermeer checked the metadata on digital copies. The documents had been created on different dates. But one hidden field remained unchanged. The author name embedded in the files. Mark Velt. Velt was a mid-level insurance consultant known in the district. Quiet, efficient, trusted. He had no criminal record. He had also attended a private meeting with several box holders 2 weeks before the burglary. That was interesting, but not enough. Vermeer requested older claim records involving the same consultant. She found something stranger. Over 6 years, Velt had repeatedly handled insurance adjustments for stones that had been moved, recut, damaged, or lost in transit. Individually, the claims seemed unremarkable. Together, they formed a map, a network of companies that appeared separate but repeatedly touched the same brokers, the same appraisers, and the same private couriers. One courier company had closed abruptly 3 months after the vault burglary. Its final payment had gone to a small logistics office near Turin. The office was nearly empty when Italian police visited. Nearly. In the back room, beneath outdated invoices and broken shelving, officers found a paper ledger. Not a list of diamonds, not names, codes, dates, weights, and beside several entries, a handwritten symbol. A small triangle drawn in blue ink. Vermeer returned to the Antwerp claim files. She spread copies across a conference table. She searched for the triangle. At first, nothing. Then she saw it. Not in the documents themselves, in a scanned photograph submitted as proof of ownership. A tray of diamonds rested beside a folded paper envelope. On the corner of the envelope, almost hidden by shadow, someone had drawn a small blue triangle. The same symbol. The ledger, Vermeer concluded, was not an inventory of stolen stones. It was an inventory of stones prepared to re-enter the market. The diamonds had not been moved as a single collection. They had been divided into parcels. Some were recut. Some were matched with existing certificates. Some were introduced through legitimate transactions involving companies connected to Velt's network. This created a disturbing possibility. The burglary crew had handled the entry, but someone else had handled the disappearance. Someone who understood that the most difficult part of stealing diamonds is not taking them, it is making them legitimate again. Vermeer's team reconstructed the timeline. In this dramatized version, Notar Bartolo had been recruited to help access the vault. His crew believed they were stealing a massive, privately assembled collection. But Velt had concealed part of the arrangement. Several box holders had already removed high-value stones before the burglary. Their boxes contained lower-value substitutes, incomplete parcels, or carefully chosen items that could support inflated insurance claims. The burglary was real. The losses were real. But the reported total was engineered to be larger than the contents of the vault. The thieves thought they were robbing the building. The consultant thought he was robbing everyone. The insurers, the box holders, the burglars, even his own partners. And that explained the garbage bag. In this reconstruction, the trash dump had not been an accident. It had been sabotage. One member of the crew realized that the payout arrangement had changed after the burglary. Parcels were missing. Calls went unanswered. A meeting place was abandoned. He could not confront the consultant directly without exposing himself. So he did something simpler. He left a trail leading toward Notar Bartolo. Not enough to recover the diamonds, just enough to ensure someone went to prison. Revenge does not always seek justice. Sometimes it only seeks company. Vermeer requested a final interview with Velt. He arrived with a lawyer and the relaxed expression of a man who believed the paperwork was too complicated to become dangerous. Vermeer placed 3 insurance claims on the table, then the courier ledger, then the scanned photograph with the blue triangle. Velt did not react immediately. According to the dramatized account, he leaned back and studied the image for several seconds. Then he smiled. Not because the evidence was weak, because he knew where the photograph had come from. It had been submitted by someone he trusted, someone inside the network. Vermeer asked one question. Why mark the envelopes? Velt looked at the ledger again and answered, because everyone believes they will remember. He had used the triangles to identify parcels scheduled for recutting and redistribution. A tiny administrative habit, meaningless until someone knew where to look. The vault had been defeated by preparation. The laundering network had been defeated by stationery. In our reconstructed ending, Velt eventually cooperated in exchange for a reduced sentence. His records helped authorities identify intermediaries in Belgium and northern Italy. Several parcels were recovered before they could be recut. Others had already disappeared into legitimate markets. Most of the stolen diamonds remained unrecovered. Notar Bartolo's conviction stood. Additional participants were charged with fraud, money laundering, and handling stolen goods. The final accounting was never perfect. It could not be. Some claims were withdrawn quietly. Some companies dissolved. Some stones had changed shape, certificates, and owners too many times. But investigators finally understood the architecture of the crime. It had not been one perfect heist. It had been several imperfect crimes stacked together. A burglary, an insurance scheme, a laundering operation, a betrayal, and a careless little symbol in blue ink. The Antwerp Diamond Centre burglary is often described as one of the most extraordinary heists in modern history. The fascination is understandable. A secure vault, a mysterious crew, millions in diamonds disappearing into the dark. But the deeper lesson is not about technology, it is about attention. Security systems are designed to detect unusual behavior. The best criminals try to become ordinary. Investigators are trained to search for dramatic evidence. The best clues often look like trash, a wrapper, a receipt, a repeated abbreviation, a mark in the corner of an envelope. The vault beneath Antwerp did not give up its secrets easily. Some of them remain hidden. But every elaborate plan leaves something behind. Not always a fingerprint, sometimes just a habit. Author's note: the Antwerp Diamond Centre burglary was a real crime. It took place during the weekend of February 15th and 16th, 2003 in Antwerp, Belgium. Leonardo Notar Bartolo was a real person. He rented office space in the building, was arrested, and was convicted in connection with the burglary. The discarded trash discovered outside Antwerp was also real and played an important role in the investigation. The descriptions of the vault's security layers, the methodical nature of the burglary, and the fact that most of the stolen property was never recovered are based on widely reported accounts of the case. The nicknames associated with alleged members of the crew have appeared in reporting and retellings, although some details about the participants and their precise roles remain disputed. Notar Bartolo publicly suggested that the burglary may have been connected to an insurance fraud scheme. That claim has not been established as fact. Everything involving Elise Vermeer, Mark Velt, the 3 matching insurance claims, the Turin logistics office, the coded ledger, the blue triangles, the betrayal within the crew, the interview, and the final recovery operation is fictional. Those elements were created to provide a resolved ending while preserving the central unanswered questions that make the real case so compelling. Thank you for listening.